Let's talk about our crappy culture. I'm going to turn into Steve Crowder. I always admire Steve Crowder because he moves around so well. I'm still going through the screeners I get at the end of the year from the Writers Guild, where you get to sort of go through all the movies of the year, especially those movies that maybe you wouldn't go out to the theater to see, the smaller movies. And I watched one that has gotten, the director won the Golden Globe yesterday for Best Drama, called The Shape of Water. And I really thought it was a bad movie. And I thought it's Guillermo del Toro, and Guillermo del Toro has a wonderful eye. I mean, the movies he makes are absolutely beautiful. The credits to this film are some of the most beautiful credits I've ever seen. So I'm not complaining about that. I'm certainly not complaining about the acting, which is absolutely terrific. Nick Searcy is in it. Our friend Nick Searcy, great actor. He is great always, and he's great in this. Michael Shannon takes this villainous character and just absolutely invests him with humanity and personality. And it's such good acting. And the star, lady named, Sally Hawkins, she plays this deaf mute. Anyway, here's just what I want to talk about, why I want to talk about this being part of our crappy culture. One of the things that the arts does, when I would go around and complain about the fact that conservatives don't participate in the arts, sometimes people would say to me, they'd say, well, is there something about being a left-winger that makes you more likely to create good art? And I would say, well, the only thing that I can think of is that art does tend to be culture critical. Art does tend to look at our culture and find the things that don't work, because every culture has things that don't work. And so, the suburbs of America during the 1950s were one of the greatest things that ever happened to humankind. For the first time, you remember like Pete Seeger, the communist spy, was all singing songs about those ticky-tacky houses. Well, those ticky-tacky houses where working people could finally live with dignity and live with a lawn and have a little piece of America for themselves. Those were some of the most beautiful things that ever happened, but they all looked alike, so they didn't suit Pete Seeger's artistic sensibility. But that does capture something about those houses. There is a conformity to it. There is a repetitiveness to it. There is a mass-produced aspect to it. So art has this culture-critical role that it plays. So what's The Shape of Water about? The Shape of Water is essentially a remake of Splash. It's about a deaf-mute girl in the 1950s in a scientific facility where they are storing an Aquaman, right? They're storing a guy who's half fish, half person. It really is Splash. It's just, except Splash is a better movie. And she starts to fall. She's very frustrated. She's alone. She can't speak. And she starts to fall in love with him. And the evil Michael Shannon is there just using this thing as a piece of scientific artifact, and then they're going to kill him. And so it's all about her sort of finding love with this creature. So who is this villain, Michael Shannon? Well, Michael Shannon is a white man who says nasty things about black people. There's a gay guy in it who is rejected, and there's black people come in and they can't sit at the counter in the local diner. And it's, so it's all about accepting the other, accepting the fish man as your lover and not being this horrible Michael Shannon character. And I thought to myself, this guy didn't exist in the 1950s, but if he ever existed, he existed in the 1950s. If he ever existed where people were absolutely certain that black people were inferior and that gays were evil, that guy might have existed in the 1950s. Those days are gone. Right? Those days are gone. It's not culture critical to attack that guy. It is self-congratulatory. It is patting yourself on the back and saying, look how wonderful I am. And anybody who says anything that is redolent at all of this 1950s America that we're going to make fun of is so beyond me and my progressive self. I mean, this is a gigantic kiss on the butt of itself. This is a piece of artwork that basically just kisses itself on the butt for 2 solid hours for how tolerant it is, how open-minded it is, how wonderful its view of the world is, not like those evildoers in the 1950s, who, by the way, created an America that we're still living off, let alone in. Okay, they created an America of so much wealth, of so much success, of so much power, of so much peace that we are still, it actually survived 8 years years of Obama's incompetence because they created such a powerful, powerful force in the world for good. When we talked at the beginning of the show about how much is going well in the world, how much of that do you think is generated by America? I would say about 90% of it. The ideas, the charity, the communications, the reaching out, the goodwill that America has always shown to the rest of the world, all of that stuff came out of an America that was created by the 1950s. And I'm not saying that obviously the bigotry in that community in that time was wrong. It was wrong. The way black people were treated, absolutely shameful. They got a case, no question about it. But if that's all you have to say is look how great we are when we're not in the 1950s. You have to address the fact that the 1950s were the people who won the war against Hitler, who built the America that we live in, who built the America of peace and prosperity that we enjoy. It's not culture critical. That is not art. And that is why leftism has done to the arts, it has done to the artistic imagination the same thing it does to everything else. It guts them. Leftism guts our institutions like Yale University, used to be a great college. Now it's just a leftist college sitting around pretending to be Yale. The New York Times used to be a great newspaper. Now it's just a leftist newspaper pretending to be the New York Times. And The Shape of Water is gutted by leftism, just pretending to be a work of art because it has nothing to say except how wonderful we ourselves are. It's the opposite of culture critical. It's culture self-congratulatory. That's why it won the Golden Globes, because the Golden Globes was just one hour of self-congratulation after another. All right, tomorrow we have one of my favorite commentators, Molly Hemingway, is coming on to talk to us. She has just been so sensible and so sane about what's going on. She's like this lone voice of sanity floating around in the media, and not entirely alone, because we too are a voice of sanity, and we will be here. I'm Andrew Klavan. This is The Andrew Klavan Show. Be here tomorrow. The Andrew Klavan Show is produced by Robert Sterling, executive producer Jeremy Boring, senior producer Jonathan Hay. Our supervising producer is Mathis Glover. Technical producer Austin Stevens. Edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike Cormina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Olvera. And our animations are by Cynthia Angulo and Jacob Jackson. The Andrew Klavan Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2017.